And this is CIA, Contagious Influencers of America, from the producers of Keep the Faith. I'm David Sams. Today I have New York Times best-selling author with me. He's written something like 24 books with some 4 million in print. He's the pastor of the National Community Church there in Washington, D.C., and he's also a motivational speaker. He loves speaking to sports teams, including NFL franchises. And I have my friend Mark Batterson with me to talk about something I know we sort of don't think about a lot these days, and that is miracles. Where have they gone? What happened to them? We hear all about them in the past, but are they happening today? And there could be miracles happening right now, right around your life, and you don't even know about it. And he's going to help identify those. And he has a new book out that will help you do just that. It's called A Million Little Miracles, Rediscover the God Who is Bigger Than Big, Closer Than Close, and Gooder Than Good. Mark, that is a mouthful. Were you able to fit it all on the cover?
We fit it on the cover, and the editors let me use the word gooder, David. That was the big thing.
I can only imagine the conversation around the conference table on that one.
Yes. It took a little bit of convincing.
So how you been?
Been good. It's good to see you. Last time we were together. Today we rely on technology, but I think we're keeping on right here in the nation's capital. And David, we've been here for 28 years, so we've been around the block a few times, been through a few elections, and we love doing what we do right here on Capitol Hill.
And you do such a superb job. I love your office there. I always love looking at folks' offices in the background. You know, it's like, I always want to, I think the only one that has more books than you have is Max Lucado. But have you actually read every one of those books?
I have read every one of those books. Do you want the very short backstory?
Yeah, please.
So when I was in graduate school, I took one of those aptitude assessments, showed a low aptitude for writing. In other words, whatever you do, don't write books. And so writing is not a natural gifting. And so what I did, David, I read 3,000 books before I wrote one, and I kind of reverse engineered them. I wanted to learn kind of how a Max wrote, or a Malcolm Gladwell, or people that I really enjoy reading what they write. And so I'm sort of a self-taught writer, I guess. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. So let's talk about this latest book, because I'm one who truly believes that people just don't understand. They don't realize the miracles all around them. I mean, sometimes I have to pinch myself and just think, wow, if I would have lived 100, 200 years ago, this, and this wouldn't have been possible. I mean, just to, I'm going to Colorado this week, just to get in Colorado without taking the wagon train and probably dying somewhere along the way. But, we complain about, oh my gosh, it's going to take a couple of hours. I mean, that to me is a miracle. I mean, so let's talk about that. What inspired this book?
Yeah, I think it is this idea that, Albert Einstein said there's only 2 ways to live your life. One is as if nothing is a miracle. The other is as if everything is. And so, reality check, David, we're on a planet that is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour and speeding through space at 67,000 miles per hour. So even on a day you didn't get much done, you did travel 1.6 million miles through space. And so we don't think about that. It's not like we get to the end of the day and, Lord, I wasn't sure we were going to make the full rotation today, but you did it again. Thanks for keeping us in orbit. God is so good at what God does that I think we tend to take it for granted. And so do I believe in the miracles that are the anomalies and epiphanies? Absolutely. I've experienced them. But I also believe in those everyday miracles that we tend to take for granted.
Now, let's talk about your personal story, because I know you have a kind of an ongoing miracle that you've dealt with your entire life. So tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, my first memory is an asthma attack, and woke up middle of the night, 3 or 4 years old, go to the hospital, shot of epinephrine, and that routine was repeated night after night. David, I played college basketball, but I never played without an inhaler in my sock. And I slept with an inhaler under my pillow. There aren't 40 days in 40 years that I didn't take multiple puffs of an inhaler for severe asthma. July 2nd, 2016, I pray a prayer, and for the record, I had prayed it many times before. And miracles, by definition, are past our pay grade. But for whatever reason, the Lord healed me that day. I've not touched an inhaler from that day to this day. It's still mind-boggling to me. Been validated by doctors. I wanted the medical evidence that, you don't have asthma anymore after 40 years. So I'm kind of living a miracle, but David, in the same breath, pun intended, I would say every single breath is a miracle. The way that, 30 trillion red blood cells, each with 260 million hemoglobin, deliver oxygen to every cell in the body. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. And so part of it is just life is just more enjoyable when you recognize all of the miracles that are happening simultaneously.
You bring up an important point that I think we don't really consider, and that is how does you took this medication a good part of your life, and then and you continued to pray, and then one day, bam. Let's talk about how God's timing plays into miracles, because they don't necessarily happen on our terms.
It's really true. And I would share just a couple of thoughts, and I want to be careful because I'm a data point of one, and one of my rules of life is something Oswald Chambers said. He said, let God be as original with others as he was with you. And so, my testimony is going to look different than yours, and yours is going to look different than mine. But I would say that I never lost faith that God was able to heal. Now, I have a spiritual father who's 82, David, who says, by the way, even if God heals you, every healing miracle is still temporary because someday we meet our maker. That day will come. But I would say this, there are moments when heaven invades earth, and the same God who created the laws of nature, which in my mind are miraculous in and of themselves, can break or bypass those laws and do things that just are beyond our left brain logic and even beyond our right brain imagination. So the one practical piece of advice I would give is that just praise God for partial miracles. I think sometimes we get frustrated because we want the entire miracle to happen yesterday. And one of the lessons I've learned is I'm a glass half full kind of guy, that even if you make progress in an area, even if it's not the complete miracle, I think we got to count those blessings and count those miracles. And it's an approach to life that just, we're not going to take things for granted. We're going to take them for gratitude.
How would you define a miracle?
Well, that is a great question. So I think there are a couple of definitions. One is the anomaly, the epiphany, something that happens that really shouldn't happen based on laws of nature, or, listen, water doesn't turn into wine. So God changes the molecular structure somehow, and it's something that seems to bypass what we consider the normal sequence of things. But I think what I'm doing in this book is arguing, David, that nothing is as simple as it seems, and everything is more miraculous than we can imagine. And let's start with the last breath you took. Let's start with a single drop of water, a single grain of sand. These are all things that if you get down to a microscopic level, and I would even flip it, if you get to a telescopic level, what you begin to see is what I would call creation clues, evidence of an intelligent designer who almost like a a filmmaker would put an Easter egg, right, into a film, kind of as a personal identifier. It's almost like God has done that here, there, and everywhere. I would even argue that the unique fingerprint, voice print, and eye print of everybody in the hearing of our words, that itself is evidence of a God who wanted to put kind of a unique stamp on you, that you are God's workmanship created in Christ Jesus to do good works prepared for you in advance.
And why is it, do you think, that with everything that seems to be so remarkable these days, I mean, the fact that we can, if you would have thought 30, 40 years ago that we could be doing this, or 10 years ago, if you would have thought, wow, 30 years from now, I could use my watch like Dick Tracy. But why do we take so many things for granted now when there really truly are, by yesterday's standards, whether it's 30 years, 40 years, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, everything seems to be a miracle all around us. But what is it about us? Why are we wired the way we are to not see that miracle in front of us?
Yeah, because they are hidden in plain sight, aren't they? And I would be just as curious to hear your answer to your question, but here's my take. It's probably some combination of those 200 cognitive biases that affect the way that we think and process, but right at the top of the list is this thing called inattentional blindness, that anything that is in our field of view with a degree of constancy, we tend to take constants for granted. So, David, you mentioned Colorado. I'll never forget the first time I saw the Rocky Mountains. I mean, it was breathtaking. And the same goes for Grand Canyon or any other kind of natural wonder. But if you live there, you're constantly exposed to it. You tend to become blind to what is right in front of you. And it's almost captured in this moment where the Israelites start complaining about manna. Okay, the last time I checked, God door dashing manna in the wilderness, breakfast, lunch, and dinner is a miracle. And so they were literally complaining about a miracle. And I think if we aren't careful, we tend to get focused on the negative. And we won't deep dive this, but I do think that negativity bias really affects and infects relationships, how we see ourselves, how we see life in general, and we have to be very, very careful. And so I'm an advocate for just really keeping a gratitude journal as a very practical way of just every single day capturing things that I'm grateful for, this, that, and the other thing. Because if you don't, then by default, we almost fall into this trap where we just start complaining about this, that, and the other thing.
Now you talk about something called the theology of play in your book. What exactly is that?
Oh man, I've studied the Bible. I've done more than my fair share of those graduate degrees at seminary, and this kind of escaped me. But there's this little verse that God made the Leviathan, which we don't know exactly what sea creature that is. It might be a whale or a walrus. We're not sure entirely, but it says that God formed them to frolic. And the word there in Hebrew essentially means he basically made them to play. Now, a guy named Sir Francis Bacon, pretty smart guy who came up with the scientific method, said that we are God's playfellows, and that in a sense, science was intended to be this grand game of hide and seek, that God reveals, Romans 1:20, his divine nature through the things he has made. And so I don't want to go too far on this tangent, David, but I feel like all truth is God's truth. Everyology is a branch of theology. But to come back to that idea of play, when Jesus said you have to become like little children, listen, what are kids best at? Well, they are so good at playing. And I think there's something, the playfulness, I think has gone missing in some churches or some theologies or some people's experience with God. Some people think of God as a cosmic killjoy. No. God is in a good mood. God is the one who gave us 43 facial muscles that enable us to smile. God's the one who gave us the ability to laugh. And so I think playfulness is something that we need to rekindle and recapture.
As you know, our radio show airs on music stations across the country and in Canada. And I know that you really believe that there's this, that you believe that there's in the miracle of music and the power of that form. Let's talk about that a little bit. Why is music so special?
Well, isn't it interesting? If I don't say it, I'll forget it. Pythagoras said that a stone is frozen music. I've always been fascinated by that. There are indicators that with very sensitive bioacoustical equipment, that there is an indicator that everything sings a unique song, that every element in the periodic table emits and absorbs at a unique frequency. And so if you go all the way back to Genesis 1, it was Leonard Bernstein who said that the best translation of Genesis 1:3 is not, and God said, let there be light, but God saying, let there be light. And so there's almost this idea that music is woven into the fabric. I mean, the fact that whale songs can travel 10,000 miles underwater, like that's pretty amazing. And right now, we know exactly what's happening in heaven. That there's a song that they never stop singing, angels, elders, living creatures, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty who was and is to come. And so, David, I think you can't not worship. We were created to worship. And one way that we do that is with the voice. And the fact that we have a unique voice print, I think even gives more credence that no one else can sing like you or for you. You have a unique song to sing to God with the time, talent, treasure that God has given to you. And that to me just makes it so meaningful. Like David, like occasionally that old hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness. Let's say there are 200 people singing that hymn simultaneously. They may be singing the same words, but they are singing radically different songs because they're singing out of God's unique faithfulness to them. And I just think that's such a beautiful picture of who God has created us to be.
Well, nobody's going to want to hear me sing.
Hey, we both probably sound pretty good in the shower, David.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Hey, what's on your hat? What's that, Doctor?
Yeah, no, it's Dream with the DC flag right in the middle.
Oh, okay.
And but you're not the first one that thought I was Dr. AM.
Yeah, I'm like,
I love it.
So how do you keep all of these stats in your brain? How do you keep them? How do you make it work?
Well, I probably ought to shout out a few editors right here because 688 footnotes may be the most footnotes ever. But I do not have I don't have a great memory verbatim, but I'm really good at remembering where I read things. And I love reading everything from astrophysics to quantum mechanics to everything in between. I'm fascinated by neuroanatomy. It doesn't mean I'm an expert in any of these things. I probably know enough to be dangerous, but I have Albert Einstein said, never lose a holy curiosity. And I guess there's just a curiosity for everything that I encounter. And it's something that some of us tend to outgrow. And I would argue that we've got to recapture that childlike curiosity as an expression of faith. I think childlike curiosity comes really close to what it means to become like a little child.
So for somebody watching this right now and just thinking, wow, you know what, I've been praying for a miracle for a long time, and I just don't think God hears me. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing I would say is tell me more, because I want to hear more of that story. And I've been disappointed, frustrated. There have been moments where, all of us have one of those David moments that Jesus then quoted on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? And God feels so far away. But I really do believe in a God who is not just transcendent, but immanent, who knows the hairs on our head, who has our names tattooed on the palm of his hand. You are seen, heard, and loved by God. And I don't have the human capacity to explain everything. David, I have a Deuteronomy 29:29 file, and that verse says that the revealed things belong to us, but the secret things belong to God. And so I've lost loved ones in ways and at times where it just didn't seem right, that conjures up questions like, God, where are you and how could you let this happen? I've had things personally that have been pretty devastating, but I will say a couple of things. That one, I put them in that file because I know that some things won't make sense on this side of the space-time continuum. But I would also say that somehow grief has increased my capacity for joy. The human condition is none of us get to sidestep death. None of us get to sidestep sickness. None of us get to sidestep loneliness or at times anxiety and depression. Such is the human condition. But I promise you, there's a God who will never leave you nor forsake you, a God who sticks closer than a friend. And he is an ever-present help in time of need. And so I'm just so grateful for a relationship that has gotten me through thick and thin.
So I want you to do me a favor. I want you to just direct a camera, tell our folks the name of your book and what you hope they get out of it.
Yeah. Well, the name of the book is A Million Little Miracles. And I will say a little tip of the cap to that song by Elevation. And Stephen Furtick was kind enough to endorse the book. So I did get an okay on that. But I think it's this idea, count your miracles, and your circumstances may not immediately change, but your perspective on those circumstances can change. I really believe that there are miracles all around us all the time, and the better we are at identifying those miracles, then it fills us with joy, and we start living our life from a place of gratitude, and that's the game changer. And so when you start counting those miracles, what you realize, David, is you can't count that high, that God is bigger than big, closer than close, gooder than good. And my hope for the book is that you wouldn't just rediscover a million little miracles, you would rediscover the God of miracles.
Well, once again, the book is called A Million Little Miracles, Rediscover the God Who is Bigger Than Big, Closer Than Close, and Gooder Than Good by Mark Batterson. Hey, Mark, it's been great having you. It's great catching up with you. I hope to see you again soon, either in D.C. or here in Nashville. It's been too long, my friend.
I love it. I would love that, David. So here or there in between, look forward to the next time.
Well, this has been CIA, Contagious Influencers of America, from the producers of Keep the Faith. Please do rate and review us. Please check out our website at KeepTheFaith.com, where you're going to find out all kinds of goodies. And, of course, our ContagiousInfluencers.com website, you can see all the episodes. Until next time, this is David Sams. Go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living it in black and white. I'll see you next time.